Welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight it is the evening before Ahsoka, what some people are calling the most important Star Wars Disney Plus show, the thing that some people are claiming, if it is not good, that they will walk away from Star Wars and they're going to leave forever. My point is, I think this is a very important show for a lot of different people, you know, whether they're making exaggerated, outrageous claims or not. I think this is going to end up being a very important show, even so far as to say, like, this is the setup to what will potentially be Dave Filoni's movie, or movies, if you believe in the rumor. And I think this is going to have, you know, a ripple effect, ramifications for stuff moving on way past this. You know, obviously the Mandalorian show has done a lot of legwork to get us to this point, to bring characters from animation to live action. But I think this show specifically, I think this is going to move the actual plot forward. You know, like, I think Mandalorian Season 3 came out, and that felt like a closing of a plot. That felt like the end of The Mandalorian, essentially. And I think the reason for that is because they finally figured out what they wanted to do. And it's to start off with the Ahsoka show and make that the thing that moves us into heir to the Empire, and bring us into whatever ties into the sequel trilogy, or moves even past the sequel trilogy by introducing a lot of other elements into the franchise, into the galaxy. You know, there's obviously been a bunch of leaks and a bunch of rumors, but I'm not going to go into that today. But if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. Like, this show may or may not introduce things that will be very important moving forward. Anyways, but today I want to go into some of these questions. I posted this list on social media already, but I wanted to really dig into these questions, and let's just talk about, like, is any of this going to get addressed? How much any of this matters? You know, and just, it's weird that some of these things have yet to be addressed, whether it's in a novel or a comic or any of that stuff. So let's go over this list. The first one, very first question we have, leading into the Ahsoka show. What was Ahsoka doing on Malachor that prevented her from reuniting with the Ghost crew in Season 4 of Rebels? So, what I mean by this is, obviously, Season 2 of Rebels, Twilight of the Apprentice, not Zelda. So, basically what happens, she fights Vader, and then from Vader's perspective, Ahsoka just disappears, gets pulled into the world between worlds, and then moments later, she comes back, and she moves on into the Sith temple on Malachor. Deeper and deeper she goes, and we don't know what happens to her after that. All we have to go by is little sketches that Dave Filoni has released over the years of her finding different things, going further down into the Sith temple. It's never been explained or explored, and she does not return for the rest of Season 4 of Rebels. She doesn't go back to Lothal. She doesn't check in on what's happening. She's not there when Kanan dies. She's just gone, and we don't see her until the epilogue of Rebels. And by the way, that epilogue, you know, we don't even know exactly when that takes place. I think we're all assuming that takes place either during this Ahsoka show or even after this Ahsoka show. It's very unclear. You know, there's been shots in the trailer that kind of match that epilogue, so, you know, it's real vague right now as to when that epilogue even happens. The point is, Ahsoka kind of just gets left on Malachor after the World Between Worlds, and she's gone. So what was she doing? Where did she go? And that even kind of brings us into another question that I'll get into later. But yeah, it's just a huge mystery, and it's so weird that it's yet to be addressed, because next we see her literally 9 years later. Because remember, Rebels ends, and then the entire original trilogy happens, which takes place over 4 years. And then 5 years after that is when The Mandalorian happens. So for 9 years, there's just like a big empty gap in Ahsoka's timeline. We don't know what happened. I'm assuming the show will address some of those things, but where was she for Season 4 Rebels? We don't know. Very weird, but big question mark there. Question number 2. If Sabine is Force sensitive, then why did Ahsoka agree to train her when she wouldn't train Grogu? So this is really kind of two different questions here, because obviously a big one leading into this is, you know, whether Sabine is Force sensitive or not. For the entirety of Rebels, there was no indication that Sabine had the Force. It was never brought up. It was never hinted at. She had some training with the Darksaber while she was wielding it, because, you know, she's wielding it. She needs to learn how to use that weapon that she has until she eventually gives it to Bo-Katan, right? Who, of course, loses it to Moff Gideon, and then the Mandalorian happens, you know? But, you know, all the marketing has been like, she's the apprentice of Ahsoka, and she's been trained. So at some point after the end of Rebels, in that 9 years of time, which, by the way, 9 years, that's plenty of time to begin and, you know, end your Jedi training, right? Like, how long, you know, obviously the Jedi trained their entire lives, but, you know, Luke Skywalker only got trained for a couple years, and he was able to defeat Darth Vader after that, you know, with the help of the dark side. But you know what I mean. My point is, if you're a grown adult and you get trained for a handful of years, you can become somewhat competent, and it seems at some point Sabine got that training. Now, why would Ahsoka train her at all? Why would she take on an apprentice when the very first thing she says to Mandalorian when she brings up Grogu, she's like, oh, he's got attachments. I know what happens when Jedi have attachments. I'm not going to train him. And I'm like, Sabine has all kinds of attachments. Did you train her? So that's another weird thing. It seems inconsistent. If she found out Sabine was Force sensitive, if that is the case, and then she just took her on as an apprentice, and okay, like, I need some consistency there, because maybe did something go wrong in that training, and then that's when she's like, no more apprentices, you know, like, is that what happened? I don't know, very weird. The next thing, of course, is if Sabine is not Force sensitive. So, you know, I think a lot of people would prefer she not be Force sensitive, if only because it would feel like it came out of nowhere, right? It would. I mean, again, 9 years have passed, so there is plenty of time for, you know, something to happen where they discover that she is Force sensitive. And if they make that the case, then fine, I buy it. My brain has already gotten used to it because the marketing has really pushed that idea, I think on purpose. But if she's not Force sensitive, then why were they training? She doesn't have the Darksaber anymore. I guess she does have Ezra's lightsaber, but she doesn't have to use it. She has all her Mandalorian weapons, right? So, like, why? It is a very weird thing if they're just like, oh, you got Ezra's saber, so I guess we'll just continue your training. I mean, I know you already kind of trained with the Darksaber, but let's just keep going, I guess. And if that's the case, it seems weird to have this apprentice-master dynamic when all it was lightsaber training, and there was no Force training involved in that at all. And also, the war is over, and they haven't, you know, gone on their adventure to find Ezra yet, which, again, that's another question. We'll get into that. So why was she being trained? Was it just because she had Ezra's saber? That seems like a really weak excuse to, like, have this whole developed relationship between these two characters who, in the entirety of Rebels, didn't really talk at all and had no relationship with each other to speak of. My point is, this show is marketing and seemingly going to, you know, just start off with, you know, Sabine and Ahsoka have this whole history behind them that none of us have ever seen, because in Rebels it wasn't there, but suddenly they have this dynamic, and it's kind of weird. Why was she being trained? What was going on? I don't know. And that kind of does lead us into our next question. Why did they wait so long to look for Ezra? Was there a previous failed attempt in the last 9 years? So yeah, just again, I'm reiterating this, but it's been 9 years since Ezra disappeared. Did they go looking for him and then find nothing? Or have they kind of just been kind of chilling out? Like, I granted the war to, you know, Endor and all that, it took those first 4 years to do that part, and then they got to establish the New Republic for the next year, you know, Jakku happens and all that, so I get it. But at some point, did they just like, oh, that's right, we gotta go find Ezra? Like the guy's been gone for 9 years. I think when Ezra left, he was probably under the assumption that within the next couple weeks they're gonna try to come find me or something, right? But it's been 9 years, and they're still trying to find Thrawn. They're still trying to find where Ezra is. You know, like that guy went from like a teenager to a full-grown adult, and he's gonna meet them, and he's essentially gonna be a stranger because he's lived like an entire other half of his life without them. So I don't know. It feels weird for there to be such a huge time jump, and then for us to also try to begin where we left off, because things have to have happened. It's been 9 years. What have you been doing? Why have you been training? Why haven't you been out there looking for Ezra this whole time? Have you gotten nowhere at all? It seems strange, but okay. Next question. When did Ahsoka meet Luke? Did they tell each other everything? So yeah, another strange decision. And I have to equate this back to the time jump that we have here between Rebels and now. When we see Ahsoka and Luke in the Book of Boba Fett, they're talking, they're hanging out. Luke is building his academy, and they've already met each other. They already know each other. They're just, she kind of casually brings up his dad, so they've already had the conversation. The conversation we're all waiting on, of course, is, did they talk about Anakin and Darth Vader? Did Luke tell Ahsoka what happened? Did Ahsoka tell Luke about, his dad? All the adventures they went on? Did they exchange stories? It feels like we as fans are just waiting on that conversation to happen. But then when we see those two characters together, it's like post-conversation. It's already happened. They've already met each other. They've already explained to each other who they are. They've already shared their stories, I guess, and it's such a strange thing to be in this place where we're already past the part that we wanted to see, like we thought we were going to see this like really emotional, interesting like meeting of these two very important characters that share, they both share the relationship with this one guy, like Anakin, Darth Vader, Skywalker, right? Like but we don't know. We never saw that conversation. How strange is that, right? Like what a weird decision. But here we are in our own show post that, and it doesn't feel like that's going to get addressed, because now we're just even further past that point where they've already met. So I guess we're just waiting on a novel or a comic or some kind of animated short where they kind of just address this, because it just feels like this open thing that, like, yeah, they already met, they already had that conversation, moving on. But we're all like, wait, no, what? Show us what happened. But okay, this one also kind of related to that. Next question. It's been 5 years since Anakin's death. Has he appeared to her as a spirit yet? Yeah, this is something that a lot of people are thinking is going to happen. Obviously, we had one little teaser that had some new Hayden audio, which a lot of people are taking to mean a flashback, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a flashback. It could be the spirit of Anakin talking to him, or talking to Ahsoka, sorry. But again, it's been 5 years. Anakin appeared to Luke almost immediately on Endor. Like at the end of the movie, he's there. So he's fully capable of showing up. So if he's taken 5 years and he still has never shown up to Ahsoka, that feels strange. But again, it also feels strange to not see that happen for the first time, because that's like a catharsis thing that we, the audience, really want. We want to see Ahsoka having to confront the spirit of Anakin, the version that she knew, because she's fought Darth Vader, and Darth Vader's gone. And again, I'm assuming Luke told her, because we don't know that either. So we want to see this like first talk that they get to have where he's Anakin again, and she gets to be like, you were gone for so long, you were this other guy for 20 plus years. Like the galaxy got rough there for a minute, but hey, how are you doing? You're a ghost now, that's cool. But we don't know. I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna get something like that in this show, but is it gonna be the first time, or are they gonna do the same thing they did with Luke and be like, oh yeah, we've already talked, we did that, yeah, okay, this is like our third, fourth time talking to each other as a ghost, no big deal. I don't know. Again, very strange. It still feels like, again, just like with the Luke situation, we're waiting on a comic or a novel or an animated short to show us this, because it feels like a really important moment that just hasn't happened, and it's been 5 years, and we're like, he's been dead for a while. I hope they've talked, I guess. I don't know. Okay, and this is our final question here. Final question. Where was Ahsoka during the events of the original trilogy? Was something more important than all of that happening? So, yeah. Just again, kind of going with the whole time jump thing. Rebels ends, and then for the next 4 years after Rebels is when the original trilogy is happening. And then here we are 5 years later, and her show is starting. So, just kind of like the same question as what's going on. Why was she not rejoining with Phoenix Squadron in Rebels season 4? Why didn't she go to Lothal and, you know, do all the stuff, help them? Kanan died. Where was she during the original trilogy? Because this was a question that a lot of us have had about Ahsoka ever since Clone Wars, right? We all assumed that she was going to die at some point because she was never brought up or mentioned in Revenge of the Sith or the original trilogy or anything. So we all assumed she was going to die. And then she showed up in Rebels, and we thought she had died, but then she gets brought back through the World Between Worlds. So once again, we're like, okay, but where was she for the original trilogy? I don't understand that part. She's just not there. And there's two answers here. The first one would have to be that there was something else happening much more important than all of those epic battles. The rebels on Hoth, you know, Luke and Han and Leia and the Cloud City, and they confronting Darth Vader. Like, all these really important events are going on, and Ahsoka's never heard or mentioned or brought up, and Luke is the only Jedi that the rebels have at the time. And yet Ahsoka was so heavily involved in the Rebel Alliance during the events and even before Rebels. She was there for like the beginning of that, you know? She was helping goddamn, what's his name? Bail Organa, you know, she was helping him out start the rebellion, and she was Agent Fulcrum, you know, or was it Fulcrum? Whatever. My point is, she was very important for the Rebel Alliance, and then she's just gone. You know, so we have Ahsoka, we have so many questions, and you'll notice like half of the questions I asked were all about what was she doing? You know, she wasn't there for the Phoenix Squadron. When did she talk to Luke? Where was she for the original trilogy? And here's my thing. For a lot of these questions, I think most of them actually, except for like the Luke stuff and the Anakin's ghost stuff, there is one answer. I have one theory, okay? And this might, you know, I have no idea if this is the case. I have nothing to support this at all. This is just my own little personal fan theory. But I have one idea of how this could all kind of be answered in one really cool way, okay? So, we know that she was fighting Darth Vader, and we see Darth Vader leave the temple, and then we see her kind of leave the temple also in that episode, right? However, what if there was a time skip there? A time skip that we didn't know happened, and it didn't look like anything changed visually, right? Because it's still an ancient looking temple. She gets taken into the World Between Worlds with Ezra, and they run away from Palpatine and all that stuff. What if, when she went back into her portal, and she's back on Malachor, what if when she went back to Malachor, it was suddenly like 8 years later? What if when she went back, the original trilogy had already happened, and she actually like skipped several years of time? Suddenly, the idea that she, you know, went into the World Between Worlds and then came back out, and she thought she was in the same exact day, but what if that was actually her post-original trilogy? She did this huge time skip, so for her, it was only a couple minutes while she was, you know, running away with Ezra and all that, and then she comes back and it's like, oh, the Empire's gone. We did it. I missed the whole thing, but we did it, I guess. And that's why she's only just now re-entering the galaxy, and that's when she goes and they do that epilogue that's happening during the show, I guess. That would at least help explain some of this, if that's what ended up being the case. If they say that when she came back to Malachor, there was actually a time skip there, and she missed the entire original trilogy because she skipped that time. That would actually make a whole lot of sense to me. Now, I know what you're going to say. Ezra went back to his portal and there wasn't some crazy time skip. But I am willing, as a fan, I'm willing to just like bend that and be like, okay, I will bend that believability, and just, if that's what Dave Filoni ends up doing, saying there's a big time skip and that's why she wasn't there for the original trilogy and that's why she didn't show up for season 4 of Rebels to help them out at the end, it's because she literally skipped some time. I would be like, you know what? I'll buy that, because, you know, World Between Worlds doesn't really make sense. It's all confusing and it's supposed to be vague, and you know what I mean? You're not supposed to explain how it works too much, you know? So I would be willing to accept that as an answer. Now, I had all these questions. I listed them all here. Truth is, I doubt that even half of these things are going to get answered. One day, like I've been saying, we're going to get a comic or a novel, and we're going to finally read about these interesting things that I feel like we probably should have seen on screen, but we just haven't yet. Either that, or this show, and I highly doubt this, but who knows, or this show is gonna kind of be like the Book of Boba Fett, where half of it is a bunch of flashbacks. Do you remember how Boba Fett kept on going in the back to tank, and he'd have like another flashback that would just be like at a different point in time in the last 9 years? What if this show does that? What if this show is just like, oh, here's when Ahsoka met Luke, and here's when Ahsoka talked to Anakin for the first time, and here's where Ahsoka was during the original trilogy. It just keeps on flashing back and to the last 9 years to keep answering all these questions. On one hand, I'd be kind of happy because at least I get my answers, but on the other hand, I don't know if that actually makes for a well-paced show, right? Like, that was kind of just a thing that everyone made fun of in the Book of Boba Fett because they kept on doing it. So I don't know if they're gonna do that, but man, I want my answers. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about these questions. Do you have any more that I didn't put on my list? Did I miss something that was really obvious and explained away any of this stuff very easily? It's possible. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'm excited for tomorrow. I think it's gonna be like 8 o'clock for me. I think it's 6 o'clock on the Pacific time, right? So yeah, I guess we'll see what those first 2 episodes are like tomorrow. All right, see you guys later. Bye.